Yo YouTube, and I'm super excited to see you here again, and today we will continue to work on this new diorama. In the previous video you have already seen how I built and painted the tank IS-2, but now I'm going to share with you my experience of building the foundation for the diorama. It will be a rain now somewhere in eastern part of Germany in 1945. As main material I took a sheet of dense foam, because it's pleasant to work with. If you need to make a hills or hollows, you can use knife, but also jet lighter. This is a rather interesting and handy way of shaping the foam, because it smells slightly and the top becomes very solid and durable. Paving stones is very common for the European streets, so I decided to make an imitation of the brick pavement. There are many different ways to do this, but I decided to go least tiring one. You can use this method for any scales, besides you always have the opportunity to fix your mistakes very easily. As you can see, I mixed gypsum putty, water and some PVA glue. It will make material harder and it won't split off and break during processing. It's necessary to make a layer thick enough to be able to cut each brick individually. I started with using a hard brush, but then I remembered about the most technologically advanced tool in the world. The finger. After the surface has dried, it's necessary to make it smooth. You can use the sandpaper, but I found the old saw blade to be a very productive tool. It's easy to control, it doesn't clog, and the processing speed is quite high. Moreover, it's just a very pleasant process. I also make high differences. It's necessary to make a main road and the pedestrian sidewalk which is slightly higher. Since the sand is at the crossroad, I'm making slight rounding on the side. Now we begin the most interesting and long part of the work. At the first glance it seems dreary and boring, but it's pretty fascinatingly actually. I need to separate all the bricks and stones of the pavement. To do this I drew horizontal marks every 3 mm. Now we need to connect them and scrape a thin layer of the gypsum. I use a regular ruler and a knife for this job. After all vertical slides have been drawn, it's necessary to cut each brick separately. To do this, cut vertical slides with a 5 mm interval. I do it checkerwise way, although you can choose other ways. There are a lot of different types of the pavement. Just look at the real photos of German paving stones and do what you like. I'm spoiling some bricks to make it more realistic. This will give the effect of antiquity, because in real life the paving stones were not ideal. Since this is a gypsum, it chops off like a real stone. That is the benefit of this method certainly. Next I put the foundation aside and initiate to create the building. I cut out the template to facilitate the work and cut some parts of 2 mm cardboard. I cut all windows and doors and glue all the layers into one big sandwich. If you look at the photos of Detroit building after the bombing, you can clearly see that the walls are relatively intact while the floors are mainly destroyed. Therefore, I cut the floor parts most chaotic way. We will refine them later. I use a few layers of cartridge paper to make the foundation of the building and the window frames. Next, I coat the entire surface with my nuclear mixture with gypsum and glue in order to make it a little bit rough. Now I do the imitation of the brickwork of the building, the same way I used for the pavement. It's a little bit jewelry work, but the idea is the same. In order to diversify the base for a little bit, I decided to add an explosion funnel. To do this, cut out the necessary part of the material, then cover with gypsum. In this case, it's necessary to cut through the bricks, as if they were slightly raised due to the explosion. I make holes in the floors using very thin drills. Afterward, I install their separated pieces with a wire that simulates the fittings. Next, I grind large piece of gypsum and cover the entire surface. In order to make such fragments, I simply pour a thin layer of gypsum on the surface. After the drying, break it into necessary pieces. Here you can see the whole process of creating ruins in more detail. This is a rather monotonous but very creative stage of the work. Next I cut signboard out of thin cardboard. Such small pieces always are quite sophisticated to make. Sometimes I dream about a laser cutting machine. Painting. That was my first experience in painting paving stones. I can't say whether it was easy or difficult. It all depends on the result you want. I started by coating the entire surface with black color, so in the future all the individual bricks will stand out. In this case, it's the best to use diluted liquid acrylic paint or the oil one. Next, using a dry brush method, I cover the top with the primary color. As you can see, it's slightly brighter than it's necessary. I used about 7 different shades of gray to make the texture of the pavement looks naturally. This is a very long process, so let me immediately show you the finished result. I did the same job with painting the brickwork on the walls. Cover the entire surface with the main color, separately highlight each brick in different shades. In my first video about the yak panther, I showed the recipe how to make an imitation of the soil. Just check it out. Add more details, this is always useful. As you can see, there was a fire on the ground floor, so I covered the inside walls of the building with a dark dirty paint to create a soot effect. And now this is my favorite time to create a house. Just add more different derbies. Made some anti-tank hedgehogs from cardboard. It's very simple to do. It's necessary to make 3 cornered profiles and glue them in one point in the middle. And finally, that's all for today. I hope you found something interesting and useful for you. I would be really happy to inspire someone to create and enjoy the process. Please like and subscribe the channel and you'll find some new awesome projects as soon as possible. Thank you guys for supporting and see you next time.
No.